Okay. So, yeah, good to be with you this afternoon. So, um, as promised a few weeks back, I started following a specific sequence of meditations, a sequence of meditations known as the stages of the path. This is a sequence of meditations that the Tibetan term for this is Lam Rim. Lam means path, Rim means stages. A sequence of meditations that encapsulates the entire path to enlightenment from the basics to the more sophisticated practices. When we say the basics, first basic meditations are all about meditations to do with ourselves and how to protect ourselves, how to benefit ourselves, increase the freedom of our mind. The more advanced practices tend to emphasize building a good heart of love and compassion. So the Lam Rim meditations have a huge range of meditations on building a good heart. But um, so the first meditation traditionally is meditation on the preciousness of our human life, and that's extraordinarily important to have a way to encourage ourselves, to uplift our mind, to make our mind happy and peaceful and energized. And that's particularly important because the second meditation is meditation on death, and the third meditation is a meditation that I'm going to do today, which is on how everything can go terribly, terribly, terribly wrong inside our mind. And so I titled this talk Living at the Edge of Chaos. This is not typically in the uplifting category, but it's in the energizing category of meditations. But I'll explain what I mean by that. But you can see how really we need meditation is not just a one-dimensional thing. It's not just about just breathing meditation or any one particular practice. Just like our mind, right? It's a multi-dimensional thing. You need aspects of your mind that can energize, cheer you up, uplift you. You need aspects of your mind that are sobering, right? A bit more, and you need aspects of your mind that clearly understand risk. So, this meditation, living at the edge of chaos. What does this mean? You are currently living inside your mind. You will never escape from inside your mind. So right now, what you're seeing, you think you're seeing me, right? You're not seeing me. You're seeing dots on a computer screen. But you're not even really seeing dots on a computer screen. What's happening is that the I wanted to say pixels, but the cones and rods in your retina, right, are being stimulated by light, right? And your eye is somehow you've trained your eye to focus light on the retina. The retina are just the nerve endings. They're actually the edge of the brain. The retina is actually part of the brain. It's the outermost edges of the brain. But what happens when your retina is stimulated is it stimulates parts of your brain, the optical cortex and so forth, in a way that is basically would be almost impossible to sort out that it was actually a visual image. But somehow our brains have evolved and learned how to assemble a picture of a world from this stimulation on the retina. But everything you're seeing right now is inside your brain or inside your mind. Everything you're hearing, everything you're smelling, everything you're tasting, and all the tactile sensations, your brain assembles this into a virtual reality. You're already living in virtual reality. You're an early entrance to the metaverse, right? You're well ahead of the curve, right? So you're living in a virtual reality. Now, importantly, there's also this other whole overlay, which is our mental awareness of five senses, and then our mental awareness. And our mental awareness is all of our history, in our genetics and our hormones, all playing together to tell a story about the world that you're living in. In particular, is it a safe place? Is it an unsafe place? Is it a neutral place? Is the world fair? Is the world unfair? Are you loved? Are you living with lovable people? Are you living with beautiful people? Are you living with terrible people? Right? Are you living with boring people? That's the problem. Even the wonderful people become boring over time, right? Even the wonderful things in your life, everything becomes boring. boredom is a secret killer of wonder and joy, right? But so we are living in our minds, and that is wondrous, right? That's miraculous. And with our minds, we create the world. It's one of the fundamental, one of the most popular teachings that Buddha gave was called the Dhammapada, and one of the sayings in there is that we are what we think. Um, so we are what we think. Everything that we think creates the world. The world is the product of our minds. So that's a very empowering statement, but it's also a very, very risky statement, right? And it opens the door to this meditation. And this meditation is how things can go terribly, terribly, terribly wrong in our minds, by way of explaining how everything that in our world that is going terribly, terribly, terribly wrong already, or has ever gone terribly wrong for anyone, or could ever go terribly wrong, that all is also in their minds. Now, to say that something is in our minds is not to reduce its importance. It's just to give it in context. So, for example, if you have pain in your body right now, that's in your mind. But it's still pain, right? That's not nice. Nobody likes pain. I can say, oh, it's just in your mind. But, if I'm in pain and it's just in my mind, I still want to get rid of it, right? Pain is pain, right? Pain is by nature, it is subjective. It's just feeling, right? Now, the history of science has been about trying to understand, traditionally over the last few centuries, it's been about trying to understand objective reality. What is the world objectively like? If I drop something, I can objectively say it's going to fall because of gravity and so forth. But over the 20th century, and some earlier thinkers as well have been pointing out that, what? There actually is no objective reality, right? Everything is subjective in one way or another. But then that's a bit problematic, right? Because why do we all see similar things, right? And how come if there's a fire in my house, both me and my wife are at risk, and the dogs, right? There's this commonality to our experience. How can everything be subjective? And so one of the great thinkers of philosophy of science that I've mentioned previously is named Karl Popper, and he said, "Oh no, there's the subject, there's the objective, the outer phenomenon, whatever that is, and then there's the subjective world of our minds. But then in between that, there's the world of ideas and information, and it's this world of ideas and information that we're actually dealing with most of the time. And our idea about, for example, the self is an idea, right? I have an idea of who what I'm like, but my idea of myself is actually very different from your idea of me, and vice versa. Our idea of the world, the companies we work for, the world we're living in, society we live in, we all have slightly different ideas. But that's where this commonality is created, because we all have these very similar ideas, similar information, similar concepts. So these concepts that we have of the world, they're formed in, so they are they define and determine everything about our experience. And at any one moment, the world you live in, what you're doing to the world, and what the world's doing to you, those four things, they're all dependent on your ideas of the world, of who you are and what's going on. And so when a friend of mine recently shared publicly that he was suffering from intense panic attacks. And he described it like this. He said, imagine that you're in the most frightening situation you could possibly be in. I think about things like not being able to breathe, right? the fear of not being able to breathe, or having someone, attacking me, or in the dark, like these horror movies, things that might arise in dreams and so forth. But then imagine that he said when he was describing his panic attack, imagine that the situation disappeared, but the fear was still there, right? The situation disappeared, but the fear was still there. And imagine that that intensity of fear was with you all the time, no matter where you were, no matter what you were doing, right? And this is the way he described his panic attacks. And you can hear that and hopefully, your heart goes out to him, and you think this is a horrendous state to live in, right? It is a fear that is created by the mind, based on some, just our concepts that we are vulnerable, right? And we are, just by definition, vulnerable, right? The first thing we do as babies is to cry and scream, because we know, right, from early on that we're vulnerable, and greater or lesser fears arise every day. I started recently, I'm not saying I'll keep it up forever, but people keep a gratitude journal. I started keeping a fear journal. Like, what are the things that I'm afraid of? And every day writing down different things that I was afraid of. Not for the purpose of reinforcing those fears, but for the purpose of making those fears explicit and giving them words for myself. And every day I have no shortage of things that I'm able to write down that I'm afraid of, right? Afraid of guiding a terrible meditation class, afraid of what people think of me at work, afraid of my wife getting unhappy with me as long, just endless lists, right? There's no shortage of things that we can be afraid of, right? So John was asking me recently, about dreams. What do dreams indicate? So the interesting thing in dreams is that, remember I talked about these 5 sense awarenesses? In your dreams, those 5 sense awarenesses are cut off, but you just have your mental awareness, right? So our mental awareness is the land of stories, the land of storytelling, right? And our mental awareness is this overlay on top of every other aspect of our world. Normally, our mental awareness is dominant in our life. We're just living in the stories, right? So when you dream, you are dreaming in this world of stories of your own creation. And you're in this world that is back to these 3 things I mentioned before, like the physical external world. Well, you're not experiencing that when you're dreaming, right? When I was talking about objective reality, the physical world, you're not experiencing that when you're dreaming. The mental world, of course, we're experiencing that, but what we're actually experiencing in our dreams is this interplay of information, concepts, ideas, thoughts. And the dream world is kind of timeless because the world of ideas is timeless. Now, dreams can include premonitions of what will happen in the future, can include memories of what's happening in the past. Does that mean you can see the future? Does that mean you can see the past? Does that mean you have psychic powers? I don't know. If everything that exists, we know through the mind, right? So in our dreams, you're getting some sense for the kinds of things, the huge range of things that the mind can experience. And if those come up later in your experience, and they're similar to what you experienced in your dream, you see, there it is. Same thing. I dreamt that I was in danger, and here I am in danger. And it's in fact the same thing because it's the same concept. The same way that when we watch a movie, we can relate to the movie, we can empathize, we can get into the story because it's a story, and stories are timeless. And the world of the mind is timeless. The world of the mind is not, I can be, complaining about things that happened years and years ago because they're just as painful now as they were then, because it's this timeless sense of like my living in an unfair world. So how bad can things become? Obviously, we've been, if you're looking at the news, you see on the like Russia on the brink of invading Ukraine, the US declared publicly, we're not ever going to fire shots against Russia because that's a world war, right? So we know, like, dealing with nuclear powers and the reality of living in a war zone. In America, we live such a, often to some degree, we live a sheltered existence because we've not been directly exposed to warfare in this country for a very long time. But most countries in the world, people have tasted war fairly recently in their fairly recent experience. And war is hell, right? War is absolute hell. Fire, bullets, screaming, blood, all of those things are in the mind, in the sense that they are in the mind of the people who experience it. And that is not to reduce the severity of those things, right? But everything is in the mind. Every aspect of existence is in the mind, which means our mind has the capacity to experience fear, pain, trauma, terror, and our mind has the capacity to experience anger, hatred, violence. One of the things that really set me on this path were, as a young child, knowing that my mind was capable of really evil things. Joanne had reminded me of a story when I was age 5 or 6. I brought a small knife to school. And the teacher then said, and I pulled it out and showed kids. And the teacher said, "Why'd you bring this to school?" And I said, "Oh, I want to kill people." Age 5, 6. That, kids say that stuff, right? It reflects this honest, intention, right? Because that intention, these intentions, we can pretend to be immune to evil actions, but as one of my teachers said, there is nothing that an uncontrolled mind is not capable of. There's nothing that an uncontrolled mind is not capable of. So if we don't have proper controls in our mind, there is no evil that we're not capable of doing. There is no suffering that we're not capable of experiencing. And when you have a war situation, it brings everyone into this state of a horror. It's a horror movie, right? And so it's very interesting. There's debates about does playing violent video games stimulate violent tendencies? Well, still some active debate. I don't know. What I do know is it's fascinating that we're so interested in that. I think it's absolutely fascinating. There's so many people who just love spending their free time doing these first-person shooter games, right? Watching horror movies. Everyone and the whole family can gather around and watch an action movie. Everybody likes a good action movie, right? Bit of explosion, bit of violence, bit of fear. There's something in our minds, right? That's triggering. So this meditation, living on the edge of chaos, it is a meditation to actually become aware of these fears and actually hold these fears in our mind. Now, if your mind, if that causes you to freak out or have panic attacks, back off. Not a good time for the meditation. You need to be the judge of what meditations are useful. But one way to think about this meditation is you have fear anyway, right? You have fear every day, right? You have disappointment every day. You have anger. You have all these unpleasant negative emotions, right? Everybody guides meditation. Okay, meditation on love, meditation on gratitude. Oh, that's great, right? What if you're not experiencing love and gratitude? What if you're experiencing anger and jealousy? What if you're experiencing fear and craving and so forth, right? If it's in your mind, you need to become aware of it, right? If it's in your mind, you need to become aware of the reality of that. But know also that it doesn't define you. And that's really the beauty of what people in popular culture now call mindfulness. Mindfulness, traditionally the word almost means more like remembering, but it's almost like being aware of something, being aware of fear in the mind, being aware of anger in the mind, being aware of jealousy, being aware of all these undesirable things, all undesirable tendencies. And so when we're meditating, we can meditate on the bright, beautiful, virtuous parts of our mind. We can meditate on the dark, evil, harmful, scared parts of our mind. But we do all of them with some mindfulness, some distance, just some watching, some being aware, some just being honest, right? Just being honest. One thing that people, just being honest. The hippie movement got a little bit of a bad reputation, right? Because it was all about flowers and love and peace and so forth. Flowers and love and peace are the best things out there, right? We should spend all our time with flowers and love and peace and so forth. But we need to understand that there are also these dark and dangerous sides of our mind, and the world is very difficult to manage and to get to a place where we can just focus on peace and love and happiness. And to get there, we have to accept the darker sides within our own mind, within others' minds, be it at peace with them in the sense of accepting, acknowledging, noticing their reality, so that we, so that we're not pretending. Just being honest, starting from a place of honesty, is the most important foundation that we can have for working with our own mind. So. Okay, so the way we'll approach this meditation, again, you be the gauge of what's helpful for you in your own meditation. I'm here to give you ideas. You're totally in control in the meditation. What we'll do is we'll meditate, but we'll meditate after we do some initial breathing meditation. We'll actually bring to mind situations that stimulate fear. And for example, could be imagining a war zone or a situation of poverty or danger, or an animal being preyed upon by other animals, for example. And just recognize how all of these fears are in our mind right now. In the meditation, they're in our mind. When they happen in reality, they'll still be in our mind. Again, not to undermine the seriousness of them, but to recognize what the mind is capable of, the full range of experience the mind is capable of. Doing this, among many, many other things, can help prepare our mind to be more mindful, be more aware, be more at peace when difficult situations do arise in our life. So we can settle in for some meditation now. Again, finding a comfortable position. Take a deep breath in and out. Another deep breath, just inviting ourselves to relax. Another deep breath, just asking ourselves what is important right now. We start to become aware of our body, especially as each breath moves through the body. And we can notice now that everything we're experiencing is in our mind. The sensations, the feelings in our body, thoughts in our mind, they are playing out. But also there are the stories that we use to structure our experience. The story of who we are, what our world is like, what we're doing, what's happening to us. And we can bring to mind a situation that triggers our fear or that represents the edge of chaos. Tasting more of the full range of darkness that our mind is capable of. There is nothing that an uncontrolled mind is not capable of. And there is no end to danger, fear, pain that our mind is capable of experiencing. And then we can bring to mind our friends, family, colleagues, people who've influenced us throughout our life, recognizing their kindness to us, but also recognizing that they too experience these countless fears. They too are vulnerable. And we imagine that we're doing this meditation together with them, all of us honestly acknowledging the risk and darkness that our minds are capable of. can think, although the mind is capable of unimaginable pain, fear, violence, evil, we can protect and control our mind to avoid such dangers. Our responsibility is to bring our own mind under control, and through this to help others to bring their minds under control, to help society pull back from the edge of chaos. To build an inner protection and refuge in our own minds. Just in this brief period of time, our minds have changed. We've acknowledged the darker aspects, improved our wisdom, compassion. And these are inner paths that we are building, inner habits of thought, pathways that can help both ourselves and others. We spend the last minute or so just reflecting on the power of training our mind. Then we can arise from our meditation.